I'm going to talk a little bit about selections from this point on and just the different tools that you use to do that. So over in your toolbar, you have the first four tools are generally regarded as selection tools. So if you hover over any of them, there's the crop, there's the magic wand, the lasso, the rectangular marquee, and the move tool. Frame tool is more for web designs and stuff like that, so you don't need to worry about that. So crop tool, very quickly, is the simplest one. A lot. If I hit the crop tool, I can crop down and say, I just want this part of the image. I press enter and it's done. So undo that. So it's just reframing it. So if I draw a box, that's it there, press enter, and that's the only bit of the photograph that's left. And I'm pressing Command or Control Z to undo that every time I do it. So that's basically how you would select an area of the image and just reduce the image down to it. But selections are primarily used for isolating areas of space that you want to affect and not any other area. So if I choose the rectangular marquee and draw a box, anything I do to this image will only happen inside this box now. So there's paintbrush. I paint. No matter how much I paint outside it, it will only happen on that in that box. Now, if I open up my layers, you can see that I've got this layer here, which is this image. I'm going to make that a bit bigger so you can see it. So there you go. So this layer has this rectangular selection on it. If I paint on it, it'll fill that in, but it'll be painting over whatever's here. If I make a new layer down here, and that's a new layer here, if I fill this in, you can see that that's on a separate layer from that. And that's what you always want to do. You always want to keep elements separate from each other. This will look exactly the same if I paint that square or that rectangle onto this image, but I won't be able to move it independently. This way, if I choose this, I can move wherever I want and I can deselect it. Now I can move this anywhere and everything underneath is still there. So let's say I move and take another layer and I'm going to draw a circle this time. So I hold this down, elliptical one is there, and I just hold the shift key down to make that a circle. Just going to color that in with a different color. And I'm going to use my paint bucket, which is here, and that fills that in. And then I can deselect it and move it around everywhere I want to. So that's making selections, circular, rectangular, ellipses and rectangles and squares with those two tools. If I want to add to this, I can choose this button up here at the very top, add to a selection. And then if I draw another circle here and fill that in, sorry, before I do that, I'm going to choose a square and I'm going to add this on. Sorry, if I hold the shift key down, I can draw two squares and add them together, or a third, or a fourth. If I hold the minus key down, I can subtract from that selection. So there's my weird shape. I'm going to put that on a layer of its own. So now the selection is on this layer. And I can choose my paint bucket, which is there. Let's try a different color again. And deselect. So you can add and subtract shapes from each other. Let's get rid of those three layers. And we'll just make a new layer. Start again. So if you want to make just blocks of layers, you can do that. You can add to the layer. You can subtract from the layer. And this one just gives you the difference between two selections. So let's say I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to draw an ellipse, a circle, and another one like this. Sorry, I was on the wrong shape there. There you go. So that gives you the overlap between the two shapes. Sorry, that took a little bit longer. It's a little fiddly, that tool, because it requires a little kind of forwards and backwards thinking. So you can see it does the overlap between the two shapes. Okay, so that's fine for circles and ovals and squares and rectangles, but if something's a bit more um, needs a bit more precision, you might use something like the polygon or the magnetic lasso. I'll just go lasso first. Lasso is freehand. I try and draw along that with the mouse or my touchpad, it's rubbish. It doesn't work. It's great for just selecting a big chunk of a thing and then cutting it and pasting it, but generally speaking, I've never really had much call to use it. It's fine when the edges don't matter. If you just want to select something and the edges don't matter, it's perfect. But what I'm going to use is the polygon lasso. So I'm going to click once, drag, click again. Let's say I just want to get this top face of the chessboard. See a little circle appears on the cursor. That means that when you click again, it seals that shape. So then you could copy that. Sorry. Just make sure you're back on the layer that has just the material you want to copy. Edit copy. Edit paste. And there it is. You can see it there. That's the pasted new bit that I copied. So then I can just drag that. The other thing you can do is a thing called magnetic lasso. And basically it looks for areas of contrast. So you see there's a white background and these grey squares. It knows that there's a high layer of contrast here, so it can stick to it. When I just click, hold, and drag, right? Now I've made a mistake there, going a bit too fast, but if I stick a bit closer, then go up here, I'm sticking fairly close to it. I'm just holding the mouse and moving it fairly slowly. But you see it's adding its own points in there, making its own decisions. As long as I'm sticking pretty close to it, I'm not exactly on it, but I'm close enough that Photoshop knows where the high area of contrast is. And that will select all of those points. Just go back a couple of steps there. Oh, didn't finish my selection, that's okay. So, but let's go here on this gray square, for instance. You can really find the edges of everything. Gets back, a little circle appears, and that's selected now. And again, I don't know if you were all in when we did this particular example with this checkerboard. I just want to show you this. So I'm just copying this square. I'm going to copy it, Command or Control C on your keyboard, Command or Control V on your keyboard, that pastes it, and there it is. I made a copy of that square. You can see they're identical. When I move this down here, A and B are the same color. It's just your brain is being tricked by the shadow of this cylinder into thinking that this is lighter. It's the same color, it's just surrounded by the other gray squares. It's the shadow, your brain is interpreting it wrong, basically. Anyway, neither here nor there. So last one, or one of the last ones I'll show you here is the magic wand. So let's say I want to select the cylinder and the chessboard, but not the background. I could draw all the way around it, but the background is uniform. So I'm going to click there. Sorry, my mistake. Back to the layer that I should be on. I'm going to delete these two. I don't need them. And that's always the thing. Whenever you're working on Photoshop and it's not behaving the way you would expect, you're probably on the wrong layer. So I go to this layer and I click on the background. And you can see what happens with the magic wand is it selects one pixel. And then it spreads out and it selects all the pixels that thinks are the same color as that first one until it hits an edge. And you can see here it couldn't get through to the bottom half of the image. It couldn't get over to the right hand side, but it selected everything here, and you see the line stopped at the edge of the chessboard and at the edge of the thing and at the edge of the document and the edge of the cylinder. So if I hold the shift key, I can add to the selection. I can add. So now I've got all the white space around the background. And if I want to fill that in, can do that. Okay, so let's say I want to do it again. Hold the shift key down. I'm selecting all the blue. Hold shift. Selecting all those. And then paint bucket. And then deselect. So I'm going to go back a couple of steps back to where it was pure white. There you go. Deselect that. So the other thing you can do is you can select by color. So I'm going to say select. Oh, sorry. Before I finish with the magic wand, I'm going to select all of the white background. And let's say I want to select the chessboard and the cylinder. I could select all the white background because it's the easiest thing to select. And then I can just say select inverse. And now everything except the background is chosen, the chessboard and the cylinder. I could copy, I could paste directly onto itself. So let's go back to our layers. And you can see there's copies there. I should be able to line those up visually. The scale issue, but you know what I mean. So let's spin that. So let's say I wanted to select these light gray squares, right? I'm going to say select and color range. Actually, before I do that, I'll illustrate the point by selecting the white in the background first. So I selected the white. Anything that's in white here is going to be selected. And anything that's light is probably going to be selected too. So I'm going to make this much fussier. So anything that's in white is going to be selected. Anything that's black is not being selected. If it goes grey, some of it will be selected. So instead of choosing the white background, I'm going to choose the grey here. Now you can see only the grey squares outside of the shadow are being selected now. So you can see that. And now if I was to paint over this, paintbrush, change a different color. So, sorry, I pressed save by mistake. Cancel, undo, deselect. So what I did there I cancelled it. I said undo, which is Command Z, and or Control Z on a PC, and I press Control D to deselect. You see there, deselect is there, and it's Command D or Control D on yours. Undo is there, Command Z or Control Z on a PC. So let's say I wanted green. So I'm going to say select color range. I click on the green. I bring up the fuzziness. So you see it's kind of getting confused as to what's green and what's grey there. You can see it's only really giving me that much. But let's say I decide, you know what, I want to get that property. I'm going to build it up out of these primitives, which are circles and squares. So I'm going to go okay, so that's that. I'm going to change this to rectangle, and I'm going to add to it. Go back there, and then I'm going to do another ellipse at the bottom, and I'm going to add this on. Let's say you spend more time on it than I did, but then you could just go image, adjustments, hue and saturation, and then I could just change the hue and see what it looked like with different colored. So I've just isolated that shape. I'm working on that. If you want to, you can save a selection. Save selection. I'm going to call this cylinder. And I can always just, if I delete that, so deselect, Command D, I can say select, load selection, and then I would just have to find the one I wanted, and there it is back again. So you can save those. So selections are great for extracting elements from an image and copying and pasting them, or just, adjusting color. Any aspect you want to change, you can use a selection to isolate it. And if I hold the magic wand, now I'm going to hold Shift, and I can just go bit by bit to get what I want. And you see the way it's kind of this, it's deciding that actually there's a different color there and there. If you bring up this number at the top, tolerance, say 25, try again. I'm holding the Shift key down. See, that is getting more in each go. So the higher the tolerance, the more likely it is to believe that two shades of grey are the same. So I'm just holding the Shift key down. I think I got them all there. And now, if I choose my paintbrush, a really big brush, I missed one there at the side. But you can see, with a bit of thought, you can kind of do something interesting with it. Okay, that's enough for selection for one day.